Hi learners, in today's video we will be talking about the present continuous or present progressive structures. First, we need to know that the present continuous is used to describe actions that are happening now. Some adverbs we can use to talk in the present continuous are now, at the moment, or these days. Before we formulate a sentence in the present continuous, we need to know that we need two important elements. The first element is the verb to be, and the second element is the main verb with its ing ending. This is the verb to be, and this is the verb in its ing form. Okay, so we know that the verb to be has three different forms. We've got am, is, and are. Always when we want to formulate a sentence in English, we need to have a subject. And the complement in this type of sentence is optional. That is how we can now formulate a sentence in the present continuous. We have George is training at home now. So what we can notice in this sentence is that we have the verb to be, we've got the main verb in its ing form, and then we have a complement. We also added an adverb which describes when the action is happening. I can also modify the adverb. I could say George is training at home at the moment. Or I could say George is training at home these days. This is the way we formulate an affirmative sentence in present continuous. What happens with negative sentences? That is what we are going to see now. We already saw how to make a sentence in the affirmative form. What we are going to see now is how to make a sentence in the negative form. This is pretty much the same. The only thing we are going to change is that now we are going to add not after the verb to be. That is how we have George is not training at home. Not training at home. We can also have a contraction. We could say George isn't training at home. In the cases of the negative sentences, there are not many changes we have to do. In the interrogative sentences, we are going to start with the verb to be. After, we have the subject, then we have the verb ing, and finally, we have the complement. An example of this would be, is George training at home? For this question, we have two possible answers. We can say yes or no. In the case of yes, we say yes, he is. In the case of no, we say no, he isn't. This is what we know as a closed question. But what happens if we want to have an open question? The only thing we have to do is to add a WH question word. When is George training at home? Now, it's impossible to answer with yes or no. What we do is to give a complete answer following the affirmative sentence pattern. That is how we have George is training at home now. When is George training at home? George is training at home now. Notice how we follow the same pattern we have in the affirmative sentence. We have the subject, which is George. After, we have the verb to be. Then we have the verb in its ing form, and then we have the complement. And this is how we formulate sentences in the present continuous. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe.